Picture this. In the early 1600s, there was one place on Earth that was the absolute envy of the world. It wasn't England, it wasn't France, it was the Netherlands. For the first time ever, a republic of merchants, not some king, had built a truly global trading empire. Amsterdam wasn't just another city, it was the engine of the world. It had the first real stock market, the most advanced banks. These guys were the undisputed masters of capitalism. But here's the paradox, and it's a big one. The most financially savvy nation in the world went completely broke gambling on a flower, a tulip. The reason this story still matters today is simple. Because just like the Dutch, we have a nasty habit of mistaking the wild euphoria of a bubble for a new era of permanent prosperity. And the crash that follows? It's always the same. When tulips first showed up in the Netherlands from the Ottoman Empire, they were just an exotic curiosity, a status symbol for the rich, like a Rolex or a sports car. But in the 1630s, that harmless hobby mutated into a financial monster. The Dutch economy was booming. They had all these new financial tools, and they didn't just invent the stock market. They accidentally invented the speculative bubble. A virus of speculation took hold. These rare, broken bulbs with incredible feathered patterns became the hottest assets on the planet. Prices started to climb, first slowly, and then they went vertical. People weren't buying flowers anymore. They were buying lottery tickets to guaranteed riches. It got so crazy that by the winter of 1636, a single bulb of a famous type, like the Semper Augustus, could be traded for a massive townhouse on the Amsterdam canals. Think about that for a second. That's like trading a single Bitcoin today for a mansion in Beverly Hills. This wasn't gardening. This was mania. Here's what's truly shocking. While the rest of Europe was literally tearing itself apart in the 30 Years' War, the Dutch were living in their golden age. Their Dutch East India Company, the VOC, was the world's first multinational corporation. In today's money, it was worth more than Apple, Google, and Amazon combined. Their engineers were reclaiming land from the sea, their artists, like Rembrandt, were changing the game, and their society had the highest standard of living in Europe. Right in the middle of all this incredible prosperity, the tulip market became a national obsession. I don't mean just for the elite. Weavers, farmers, shoemakers, they all started liquidating their life's work. They sold their tools, their homes, their businesses, all to get a piece of the action. Taverns in cities like Haarlem and Amsterdam became informal stock exchanges. People weren't even trading the actual bulbs. They were trading paper contracts for bulbs that would be delivered in the spring. This was the birth of the futures market, and it was financial dynamite. The Dutch weren't just ahead of their time. They were building a financial fantasy on a scale the world had never even imagined. But here's the thing about a fantasy. It's not real. This whole boom, fueled by dreams of infinite profit, was completely unmoored from reality. Why? Because the Dutch made a classic mistake. They confused price with value. The paper contracts were real, but the frenzy turned a simple flower into an economic cancer. Suddenly, the price of everything else, ships, spice, real businesses, started to seem irrelevant. A bubble only works as long as there's a greater fool out there willing to buy from you at an even higher price. As soon as everyone believes prices only go up, caution gets thrown out the window. Imagine a blacksmith. He sells his forge, the source of his actual productive wealth, all to buy a piece of paper promising him a flower in 3 months. Is he investing? No. He's abandoning production in favor of pure speculation. That was the fate of the entire Dutch middle class. Economists have a term for it: irrational exuberance. It's that moment when the price of an asset completely detaches from any sort of underlying value. The irony here is brutal. The more valuable the tulips became on paper, the more fragile the real economy grew underneath. The very flower that symbolized Dutch prosperity was secretly eating it from the inside. The mistakes ran even deeper than that. Instead of reinvesting their massive profits into things that actually create wealth, like shipbuilding, trade missions, new industries, a huge chunk of Dutch capital got diverted into the Great Tulip Casino. Productive assets were being sold left and right to buy unproductive ones. The nation's economic energy, once focused on building a global empire, was now focused on flipping promissory notes in smoky pubs. The Dutch became consumers of risk, not producers of goods. And of course, they leveraged up. Oh, did they leverage up? People didn't just invest their savings, they borrowed heavily. They mortgaged their homes, their businesses, everything to buy these tulip contracts, absolutely convinced they could sell them for double or triple the price before the loan came due. They weren't just betting their own money, they were betting the bank's money too. This created a massive, tangled web of credit, with the entire system balanced on one single, insane assumption: that tulip prices would never, ever fall. What happened to all that paper wealth? Where did it go? It vanished into thin air. Because unlike Spain, which had to worry about pirates sinking its treasure fleets, the Dutch system was even more fragile. It only had to be attacked by one thing: reality. In February 1637, at a routine bulb auction in the city of Haarlem, the unthinkable happened. The auctioneer presented a batch of tulips, and there were no buyers. For the very first time, nobody was willing to pay the absurd prices. That single moment of hesitation was all it took. The spell was broken. Panic spread like fire. Everyone who had bought on credit, everyone who was holding a contract, rushed to sell. But here's the problem: you can't sell if there's no one to buy. The greater fool had finally vanished. In just a matter of weeks, the market collapsed by over 90%. Fortunes that took a year to build were wiped out in an afternoon. The guy who had traded his house for a bulb now had, well, nothing but a flower bulb. Every forced sale triggered a margin call for someone else, creating a domino effect. This wasn't just a bad day at the auction, it was a full-blown credit crisis in real time. The Netherlands had mortgaged its entire future on the price of a flower, and when that price collapsed, creditors all across the country were utterly ruined. While the Dutch economy was staggering from this self-inflicted wound, the core of its power, its actual institutions, survived. The Dutch East India Company didn't collapse, the Bank of Amsterdam didn't fail. The government eventually had to step in and offered to honor the contracts at 10% of their face value. It was a move that ended the panic but officially sealed the ruin of the speculators. The mania was a fever that finally broke. Spain's flaw, on the other hand, was systemic. Its entire imperial model was built on extraction. The Dutch model was built on production and trade, and the tulip mania was just a temporary, insane detour. The bubble didn't destroy the Dutch Empire, but it served as a brutal lesson that echoed for centuries. They learned, the hard way, to distinguish between investment, which creates wealth, and speculation, which only transfers it. The story of tulip mania isn't just about flowers and foolishness. It's about the psychology of bubbles. Whenever money seems easy, whether it's from a new technology, a new financial product, or a new crypto asset, the temptation is always the same: to believe that this time is different. That Dutch artisan who sold his tools to buy a tulip contract, he's the same person as the retiree who poured his life savings into .com stocks in 1999. He's the same as the family that took out a no-money-down mortgage on an overpriced house in 2007. The mechanisms get more sophisticated, sure, but the emotional engine is identical. A crippling fear of missing out, fueled by the intoxicating illusion of easy wealth. The Haarlem auction of 1637 carries a chillingly modern echo. It was a liquidity crisis where an asset everyone thought was as good as gold suddenly became unsellable at any price. It wasn't so different from the collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008. A single event that suddenly reveals the entire system is built on a foundation of sand. The lesson is brutal, but it's crystal clear. Price is not value. A rising market does not make you a genius. Real wealth is born from production, from innovation, from sustainable systems. The Dutch went temporarily mad because they believed a flower could be a shortcut to permanent prosperity. In reality, it was a shortcut to ruin. They only survived because their underlying system was strong. History doesn't repeat itself, but human nature is a constant. The most advanced economy of its time fell into a primitive, emotional trap because it mistook a speculative frenzy for real wealth. In every single generation that makes that same mistake, convinced that their bubble is a revolution, walks the exact same path to the exact same cliff. The question isn't whether the next bubble will come. The question is whether we'll recognize it before it pops. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe. History has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.